Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first edition of the 2026 Conservation Conversations. I'm Kristen Harbeson. I'm Political Director for Maryland League of Conservation Voters. Your presence here speaks to the power of our community and to your commitment to a healthy environment for everyone in Maryland. We'll just give people another second or two to jump in, and we'll as you're coming in, please make sure that you let us know where you're zooming in from. Put it in the chat where you're coming so we know who we're talking to. Our goal with these conservation conversations is to provide you with information, tools, and resources to be an informed and active advocate. Our agenda is driven by your interests and needs, so please don't hesitate to contact us with suggestions of what you'd want to hear about. The easiest way to do that is through the survey, which you'll receive at the end of the session. And as you join today, please type your name into the chat and tell us where you're coming in from, and any questions or comments you have in the chat so we can take a look at it. And we'll do what we can to get to as many questions as we can. So today we are going to talk about one of the biggest successes of recent years, the passage of what is known as community solar, which gives Marylanders wide access to clean energy so that whether or not they have the ability to have their own solar on their own roofs. Since the passage of the bill in 2017, Lynn, and the
2015.
2015, I knew I was wrong. And the permanent program bill in 2023, thousands of our neighbors have signed into community solar and saved money. Solar energy, of course, is a true win-win. It is cheaper than energy from fossil fuels, and it's good for our environment. I'm joined today by people who were integral to making community solar a reality. Lynn Heller is with us, currently on the Maryland LCV board, former board chair, and the CEO of the Climate Access Fund. And we're expected to be joined shortly by Delegate Luke Clippinger from District 46 in Baltimore City, and the Speaker Pro Tem of the House, who is a champion of the legislation moving from in both 2015 and 2023. So we'll look forward to for Luke joining us in a few minutes, and but we can get started. We can get started just talk to Lynn. So, Lynn, can you just sort of start off by telling us a little bit about community solar? I think most people here are probably maybe familiar with community solar, but if they're not, what is community solar?
Yeah, well, first of all, great that we're having this session today to talk about community solar, because it really is a great example of how to be as inclusive as possible in the clean energy economy. So, back in 2015, Delegate Clippinger, who will be joining us shortly, was looking at the future of solar energy and realizing that not everybody can put solar on their roof, as you were explaining, Kristen, and as folks on the call know, for a whole variety of reasons. And community solar was at the time something that a couple of states were doing, really Colorado, California, but not too many. Maryland was an early adopter, the Maryland legislature, thanks to Luke's leadership. Because what community solar does is it allows folks to sign up for solar power that's not generated on the roof. It is generated somewhere else within the utility service territory that they live in. And they can sign up and effectively pay for the amount of power that they consume on average in a year, that's generated somewhere else, that goes into the grid. And then they sign up to have their power sort of come from solar. It is also sometimes referred to as virtual net metering. That's the more wonky term, which, because it's not really that you're getting solar panels into your house necessarily, the solar electrons are mixed up in the grid with all the other electrons, you're still getting your electricity seamlessly, but you're paying for it effectively to be generated and put into the grid. And here is the sponsor of the original legislation. So I will turn over the background. Luke, I just gave kind of Kristen asked me to give a general overview of what is community solar.
Yeah, thanks. And thank you, Delegate, for joining us. Again, Delegate Luke Clippinger from the Mighty 46th and Speaker Pro Tem. Yeah, if you want to just sort of talk about sort of how you got interested in this, in the idea of community solar.
So, so community solar, thank you very much, by the way, for everybody. And I apologize for running a couple minutes late, getting over here from my other job. Uh, the community solar has been for love for a while. It's me, my internet connection is unstable, so this will be fun. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
we can hear you, Delegate. You're frozen on screen, but we can hear
Okay,
you.
I'm going to keep talking, and if it's not working, okay, I apologize. Um, anyway, community solar. My district includes South and Southeast Baltimore City, and we have a lot of places where people live in row houses, and we have in the past talked to generate solar. It's generally people who live in bigger houses and live generally out in the suburbs, although not all the time. And so community solar for me was attractive because it enabled lots of people who live in apartment buildings or live in row houses where they don't have a lot of space to generate their own renewable energy. They could effectively purchase parts of solar arrays outside of where they lived, but within the service area for a particular utility, allowing them to knock the cost of electricity down for themselves and engaging more renewable energy growth outside the cities, but also in our state. That's what I really meant to say, is engaging more renewable energy growth outside of the state, inside the state, outside cities. Anyway, been a bit of a morning. So that's one of the reasons it's a big deal to me. I actually saw a similar project when I was on a German Marshall Fellowship in Italy. It's a different utility structure there, to be sure, but I saw something in Turin that was similar to this in a lot of ways. And I'm just very proud at how far we've been able to get with community solar over particularly the last 11 or 12 years, but all the way back from when Dana Stein put in the bill first in 2000, and I don't even remember now, but at least 2011 or 12. We've really come a long way, and it's helping thousands of Marylanders with cheaper electricity and grow our renewable grid.
Well, thank you for that. And it was I enjoyed working with you on the permanent program legislation so much in 2023. One of the things I like to say, the example that I use for people when I try to explain, like, what is the difference between community solar, residential solar, or anything else? I'm like, well, if I want, fresh vegetables, I'm not going to buy the farm, but I can buy produce from uh, a community supported agriculture farm that then, so I'm buying the produce from the farm. I'm not buying the farm itself. I don't need to grow it myself. But yeah, so I appreciate, thank you for all that. So tell me about sort of how you think, so what was the process? So we passed the original legislation in 2015 to create the pilot program. And again, as Lynn was saying, Maryland was an early adopter of this. Between 2015 and 2023, other states had sort of advanced and the program developed over elsewhere. And so then when we did the permanent program in 2023, we were then sort of looking at the whole state of the situation across the country and saying, well, this is what we want to do based on what we've learned elsewhere. So what would you say are the big differences between the pilot program in 2015 and the permanent program in 2023? And I'm not sure, whichever one of you want, whoever
I
wants
think
to
I heard
take
the question to
that.
be to Lynn really quickly and see if I can resolve my connectivity issue really quickly while she's answering your question.
Very good. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, somebody just recommended in the chat that if you turn off your video, it might work better. But yeah, I can certainly
Okay.
answer the question, and Luke, just jump in when you'd like. I mean, the permanent program, first and foremost, private and nonprofit solar developers need certainty in the market to be able to invest in the development of community solar. It's very expensive to do commercial scale solar development. And it's a lengthy multi-year process of development. So if you don't have the certainty, just as with any market, that the program is going to continue, it's a little harder to get the investors and the financing. So first and foremost, just the mere fact of making it a permanent program was a huge benefit. Secondly, we really fought for, and I think a little bit later, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the low income participation and portion of community solar. But a number of us really pushed for a minimum requirement of 40% of the power having to go to low and moderate income households. During the pilot program, there were some regulatory incentives built in to encourage developers to serve low-income households, but nothing mandated serving low-income households. And as a result, there weren't a whole lot of low-income households that were participating. And so the permanent program included a 40% minimum mandate for every community solar project. And then, the third thing, and this, I'm sure there were other things, Luke, in the permanent program, but the third, from a sort of developer and financier's perspective, which is my perspective, the third thing that was important is that the cap of the total amount of community solar allowable in the state increased, not by a lot, but it did increase. And that too was really important. And Luke, I don't know if you've fixed your issues or if you want to chime in. Okay, we can't hear Luke. Kristen, should I jump in to talk about low income
Yeah.
participation?
So,
Because I know you
yeah,
were
well,
interested in that.
yeah, and also, I mean, so just talking about it, also that could give you an opportunity to talk about the Climate Access Fund, which you started at when we first met. You were working for the Able Foundation, and then you left that. You came over to Maryland. You started the Climate Access Fund and joined the board of Maryland LCV. So, how do you? Oh, and Luke is back. Luke, before we go into, do you want to talk about anything the big change that you saw between the two programs?
Between the pilot program and
And yeah,
I mean, we were able, I think, and I heard parts of what Lynn was saying as we apparently have some connectivity problems here in the House building today. Um, I think that part of it was, when we first started talking about the bill, depending on who you talk to, and there were people who outright opposed it. There were people who wanted to get in the game, but maybe were kind of supportive, but they wanted it on their own terms. And I will not go on diatribes about that necessarily, but we created, I think, a good framework in the pilot just to demonstrate to people that there would be a good a good number of people who wanted to participate in the program, and that the cost to the ratepayers would be as close to zero as we possibly could make it. And so I think we did that, and I think we demonstrated that work through the pilot. I will say other states did not take as long getting from pilot to the full program as we did. I would perhaps argue that it may not have been a high priority of a previous gubernatorial administration. Having said that, We did get to where we needed to go. We came with a lot of data, and I think that did make it very easy for us to get to the final product, which added in, I think, a lot of the details that are necessary for this to be a, a really important part of how we get more people, particularly low and moderate income people, into the game generating renewable energy. And I did
Again,
hear Lynn mention the 40%, the 40% for low and moderate income. That is, and I've heard loud and clear from many people, it is a challenge. It is a challenge to get that number. It is a challenge to get that number. I also think, though, it was a big part of the conversation, both at the time of the pilot and at the time that we passed the enabling legislation. And it's something that is important to a lot of members, to be part of the larger program. So I'll just say that's something I think that we will have to work on going forward. But still, we want to ensure that low and moderate income people are part of this program.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and now the nexus of renewable energy and environmental justice is really what brought Maryland LCV to the table, because it's such a perfect framing for all the work that so much of the work that we do. And the low and moderate income piece of it was really important. But as you said, we know that there are challenges, especially in some of the service areas on the shore, sometimes in Western Maryland, in the more rural areas, it's hard to get the subscribers. And so I know that is, we can talk about sort of what's next for the program and what challenges we need, but that is definitely on the list. But Lynn, you were starting to talk about sort of Climate Access Fund and what is like, so what that more of the low and moderate income challenges and opportunities with community solar.
Yeah, so we started the Climate Access Fund, first of all, because we thought community solar was such a great opportunity to really level the playing field and make make solar power accessible to lots of folks. And many low-income households are renters. And those who may own their own homes may or may not be able to afford to put solar on their own roofs. So it really was a perfect opportunity. The challenge with the initial legislation was that it didn't take into account, through, not surprisingly, how community solar development is actually financed, and the fact that it's really because of economies of scale and because it's really mostly a for-profit endeavor. If unless you build in financial incentive for developers, you're not going to get folks, or mandates. You're not going to get folks to serve low-income households because it is harder. And by harder, I mean it's more expensive. And when you have shareholders who are trying to get the highest return on their investment that they can, that's tricky, right? And you've got a financial model, and it simply costs more. So what the Climate Access Fund was all about, we got started to plug those financing gaps and we got started as a nonprofit green bank. And the idea really was to have a very narrow mission, which was to raise social impact capital to plug those financing gaps so that we could take advantage of this wonderful legislative and regulatory opportunity to open up the clean energy market to low-income households. And so we've spent the last 8 years really filling those financing and other gaps in a number of ways. One, through advocacy, both in Annapolis and then, although less so now, more now before the Public Service Commission, because there are still, you mentioned it's challenging for developers in certain jurisdictions to sign up low-income households. And so right now, one of the things we're really debating at the Public Service Commission level is, in the working group process, is what to do about that and how to deal with any potential shortfalls. And that's a very active, ongoing discussion. That could be an hour-long session on its own, but we won't go there. So, and then the other thing, and then we provide financing to private developers to encourage them to serve more low-income households or give them a greater discount. So we plug the financing gap. that way. And then we also ended up becoming a developer because what we noticed, one of the gaps was nobody was building solar projects in historically underinvested communities for the benefit of those communities. And so we developed and financed, mostly with private capital, a solar project on the rooftop of a school in East Baltimore to really serve as a demonstration model. And it's operational. It serves about 150, it's 100% low income. And so or low and moderate. It serves about 150 households, 85% of whom are low income. And it saves them 30% on their electricity bills. And it's been a great, if I might say so myself, a great success in demonstrating how, and we share a bit of the ownership with the households, and there's an education component, and there was a job training component. It was really a very intentional project to demonstrate how how community solar, if done in a certain way, can really maximize benefits to low-income households. Most projects are in rural areas, done by for-profit developers, and don't maximize the benefits to low-income households. So that's what we're about. And unfortunately, we are due to get $45 million to replicate our model across the state. And unfortunately, certain folks in Washington decided that they wanted to cancel the grants. And so the Supreme Court will ultimately decide whether we get our $45 million or not. So in the meantime, we're waiting to see what happens. But community solar, hats off to Dana Stein and Luke Clippinger for really getting it started. And I'm happy to answer any other questions about sort of the way the market is working now and sort of the future of it.
I would say what at Henderson Hopkins there in East Baltimore, the school where I believe Lynn was part of building out that community solar. I was there, I think, when they were when they turned things on. It's a great example of what we could be doing in this area. But Lynn's absolutely right. We have to find some way to support these programs. And on top of that, we also have to build stronger connections, I think, to actual people in these communities and in these neighborhoods. Part of the challenge is in some of these places, there are a couple challenges. One, you say that you're going to lower people's electricity costs significantly, and they're wanting to see, dollars and cents, and how much is this actually going to mean? And so part of the challenge here is the savings is real. The savings is over a long time, and that sometimes is something that you need to work with people, particularly lower income people who want to see a big bang for their buck now, as opposed to waiting in the longer term. Unfortunately, another challenge that's out there is that in the past, I'm not attributing this to Lynn will jump through the screen at me, and I don't mean that at all. Lynn hasn't done any of this. But in the past, I think in the first, with companies would send out large numbers of people to go and knock on doors and promise people the moon and the stars, just to be part, not even of community solar, but of just solar in general. And I think that there is some skepticism that was left in their wake when they left a bunch of solar arrays that were leased to people, and then they suddenly discovered how difficult it was to get out from under those leases. And solar seemed like a greater imposition and more confusing and more challenging. I think that part of our challenge, especially with community solar, and the reason for community solar, is to make access easier and to make it easier for people to engage. And so in going forward, to Lynn's point, especially for low income people, but moderate income people too, we need to find ways to make that market work a little better so that we can make that accessibility a little easier, a little easier for people to be part of, I'll say.
Yeah, and we've gotten a couple questions about, what are some of the barriers for enrollment, and especially about the low and moderate income, is about education, et cetera. But I think one of the things, and this is something that General Assembly has tried to take a swing at in the last couple of years, there are the difference between what is community solar versus what is rooftop solar versus the retail suppliers that we're targeting low and moderate income people, and especially in largely communities of color, to take them for a ride and say, well, I'm offering you free clean energy and it will be cheaper. And then it wasn't. And so the trust issue of who is knocking on your door and what they're selling is, I think, a really important piece of the puzzle. And one of the things that we need to look at is how can we reduce the need for people to actually, have more automatic enrollment for people who need it? How do we make it easier for people to get to benefit from it without having to sign on the dotted line and have to break that barrier of trust? But again, I know the General Assembly has taken a big swing at some of those things of trying to make sure that the people knocking on people's doors are responsible and are good actors and not villains. Many of them were not, and some of them were.
Yeah, and that was before the days of community solar. So just to
Right.
clarify, it was not community solar developers,
Right.
Exactly.
third-party
Right.
electricity suppliers. I just
But
a
the
couple,
difference between those two was
yeah,
was
is
sometimes hard to sell,
right,
was sometimes
right,
hard to distinguish. And so,
sure,
People
yeah,
would just hear the word solar, and that's the challenge.
right.
But I
right,
want to underline what Lynn said. This was not the community solar people. This
yeah.
was people even before the third party sellers. It was some city of some sort run by somebody who has a fancy car
Solar
company.
City.
And
So
so
there's that.
and so because of this lack of trust, um, in large part, the ways that solar developers recruit and the folks that they hire to help them market to non-low income households, the methods don't work the same. It doesn't, the sort of least expensive route for a solar developer, and I know this because I am a solar developer, am a solar developer, to take in subscribing folks is by sending out, emails and doing it all electronically and sort of impersonally. And in with market rate households, oftentimes that works and that's great. Because of this trust issue, that doesn't necessarily work, and it requires a lot more expensive um, community building partnerships with community-based organizations. We worked with the school at Henderson Hopkins to subscribe our households. We hired an extra person. We hired Neighborhood Sun, and I know we're going to hear from Neighborhood Sun a little bit later. And we hired a community-based organizer to help us reach out to folks. That was more expensive. We raised extra money to be able to do that. Developers need to think through their strategies on um, how to really reach low income households because it doesn't work. At the same time, there are developers who really do have great strategies, and it is still challenging in certain jurisdictions. And so, a couple things I just wanted to mention that have happened, are being discussed. One, to address this issue. One is that the pilot program did not include utility consolidated billing. It's this wonky term, which basically meant that people had to pay two bills. I am a community solar subscriber in my house. I have to pay two bills, which isn't a problem for me because I do, you know, ACH through my bank, and I don't have to pay attention. And then I have my utility bill. Um, but for low income households who may not have a bank account or it may be tricky, paying two bills was really difficult. Now, as part of the permanent program, there is utility consolidated billing, which is great, which means I only get one bill from the utility. I don't have to pay a second bill. And the utility deals with all of it in the back office. And I really don't I can see every month the discount that I get on my electricity bill because it's all laid out in this one bill. That rollout just started in January and it is working. There are glitches as there are with any new rollout. But so that's one thing that has happened that is Great. And that was thanks to the permanent program and the legislature and the hard work of Maryland LCV and others. And then the second thing to deal with this question of the difficulty in particularly the Eastern Shore and Western Maryland, where there just isn't as dense a population, um, and there's a lot of land on which to develop community solar. My answer would be, well, let's focus on rooftop and parking canopies. We've got a lot of parking canopies where there are a lot of people living, where there are a lot of dense populations. We've done some legislative work to try to incentivize that. That hasn't really taken off. Again, that's another additional expense. That's another story. But the second thing that is being discussed and was discussed at the legislative level didn't happen this year. And so it is now being discussed before the commission, and there are challenges with it. And so unclear, it's sort of being discussed in real time, is maybe to connect community solar with energy assistance programs that are already in operation. So it would completely overhaul the way low-income households participate in community solar. And while I think in theory it's a great idea, my concern is if community solar becomes just another energy assistance program, then you lose that connection with clean energy, and I think that's detrimental. So we're trying to figure out, but at the same time, it would make it a lot easier for solar developers all across the state. So I'll stop there, but so UCB was really helpful. And then this new discussion is, I think, we're in the process of figuring out how to make it easier for folks.
Yeah, but I know the three of us can talk about this all day long, and we have, but just wanted to respect both of your times. Luke, do you have any closing thoughts before we turn it over to Natalia and Danny and Neighborhood Sun to walk people through how actually to get involved?
Again, I want to just thank you all for, again, putting up with my apparently connection issues that are now resolved. Hopefully, we'll see. Look, this program is already helping thousands of Marylanders across the state. It has meant a greater involvement and engagement in the generation of green energy. And frankly, I'm very proud of that. I think that there are a lot of really great people out there too, like Lynn, who are doing great work. Maryland Sun, I just don't want to, all right, they're right there. A lot of really great people who are out there doing the good work to bring people into this program and to engage them into this program and to try to figure out how to make it even more effective for Marylanders. And at a time when we don't generate as much electricity here in state, it's a way of generating that electricity here in Maryland and really being a net benefit for people. So I'm very happy to have been involved in the front end. There are always going to be challenges, and I look forward to seeing Lynn's work in front of the PSC, and maybe being supportive of some of her work in front of the PSC to find ways to engage more people. But just appreciate the opportunity to talk about it and go from there.
Well, we really appreciate both of your time, and we've gotten a bunch of questions coming in that we weren't able to get to, but we will do what we can to get those answers to people who have sent it in after the fact. But in the meantime, I'd like to first of all, thank Speaker Pro Tem Luke Clippinger from Mighty 46th District and Lynn Heller for joining us and for being such passionate advocates for this important program. And then I'll turn it over to my colleague Danielle Lipinski, who will be taking it from here to talk more about how you actually can get signed up joined by Natalia Franco from Neighborhood Sun. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristen, for passing it along to us. Hi, I'm Danielle Lipinski with Maryland Youth Conservation Voters. I am our Voter Education and Engagement Manager here. And with me today is Natalia Franco from Neighborhood Sun. It's one of the companies providing community solar to Marylanders. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Natalia. Natalia, can you give us an overview of how community solar works with Neighborhood Sun?
Absolutely. So community solar, I mean, it's basically it's a way for residents to like the way I like to explain it is like it's a way for residents to kind of like sell energy back to the utility, right? So you're subscribing to a solar project that it's in your utility territory. That project generates energy on your behalf. It goes to your utility company, and then the utility pays you and each resident that is subscribed to that specific project for the energy with credits on your bill, and you get a discount on those credits. So the discount changes depending on the project, and it also changes depending on your income qualifications. So the standard discount is a 10% discount on the credits, which should save residents approximately like one bill per year. And then for income qualified residents, it's usually a 20% discount, but sometimes we have 25 or 30 depending on the project and the utility. And it's very easy to subscribe right now, especially after they implemented consolidated billing for the program. So residents just need to add like their contact information, their utility bill information, and they sign the agreement and it's all set.
That sounds great.
So
Um, can you talk more about so community solar has been pretty popular in Maryland, which is great.
mhm.
Can you talk about how many folks have subscribed? Just generally those wonderful stats you gave me earlier.
Right. So through us, it's like almost 10,000 residents in Maryland who are subscribed to the program, which is great. We also work in other states, but yeah, I think here in Maryland it's like around 9,000 something. Um, Let me just look at for the numbers real quick.
I got him here for you, Natalia, if that's all
Oh,
right.
okay.
Since you gave them to me earlier. So far, 9,955 residents have subscribed, and over 267,000 kilowatts of solar energy has been generated annually. And that is
Right,
with a savings of over $4,300,000,
right.
which is pretty darn cool, especially in this economic climate where everyone's trying to
Right.
save money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So the great thing that I love about community solar is it's a true win-win for people to save money and support the environment. And
Mm-hmm.
it's super easy to sign up. So one of the reasons we asked Natalia to be on here is to actually show you step by step how it looks when someone signs up. And before Natalia gets started, I just want to also note that every time someone signs up to Community Solar with a company like Neighborhood Sun, who we've partnered with, they do make a donation to our organization, and we just want to be
Mm-hmm.
upfront about it. So I will pass it over to Natalia to walk through the process.
Sure. Okay, let me share my screen. Um, so basically, if you go to the Maryland League of Conservation Voters link that we have, it's actually Neighborhood Sun. I can share it on the chat. neighborhoodsun.solar/MDLCV. So it will take you to this landing page. Let me move this over here. It has more information about the program if you need to read a little bit more about it. There's some frequently asked questions here, and my contact information is here at the bottom. It talks about Neighborhood Sun, but basically, if you want to start the process to subscribe, you can just start here. So we can Sunny test. Actually, let's use the test for the last name. So you add your information here. We can, I don't know, set this. Let's say it's a mobile. Let's say it's actually 212. Wait, 212. There you go. Okay, so right now, these are the two projects that we have specifically for this zip code, which is on the BG&E utility area. So if you are on a different utility area based on your zip code, you will see the options here. So in this case, for this zip code, we have two options. There's White Marsh that offers, right now, I think it only has the 25% discount for income qualified residents. And then Friendship, it has a 10% discount for everyone. So if we go here with White Marsh, it's actually going to ask you for your income. Actually, I don't know. It should ask you for your income and the number of people who live in your household to make sure if you qualify or not, and then take you to the solar farm that you qualify for. So let's say the account number is this. Let's make actually I had a okay. Let's see. And the electric choice ID number. I also wanted to show you guys a sample bill. Let me stop sharing for a little bit so I can find the bill. Okay. Do you guys see the bill?
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay, so this is the account number, and then the choice ID number is this one on the left side, because some people have a hard time finding that. So let me go back to the other place. Okay. Okay, so let's say the choice ID number would be the opposite, 099 777. Then we can use Main Street, let's say Baltimore, Maryland 21212. So if you have panels, it's going to ask you if you have panels, but in this case, so if your panels generate, like more than like 90% of your energy, then it might not be a good idea to subscribe to community solar because community solar only covers that energy that you are receiving from the utility. So I only recommend it when it's like if your panels generate half of your energy and then the other half is coming from your utility, then it will be a good deal for you. So let's say you don't have panels. So you click next. Oh, here's where it's going to ask you for your income. So if you participate on any program, you can select that here, or you can also add here like how many people live in your household. Let's say two, and let's say the annual income is like, I don't know, 80,000, and then confirm. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Well, that probably was the wrong number for White Marsh. Let me see. Let's try this. Okay, so this is here already. Next. Okay, next. Okay, there you go. So since we already had added the PG&E information, then the only thing left was to sign. So it says here, it's guaranteed discount on your community solar credits. You get monthly savings on your electricity costs. There's no fee to enroll and no cancellation fee. And then you're supporting local small scale renewable energy projects. You just need to agree to the terms here. If you want to go into more detail and read the agreement, you can do it here, but it will download a copy of the agreement. And then here you can just do your signature and click next. And that's it. And then you will receive an email to confirm your information and your subscription, and you will be all set.
Great.
So
Thank
it's
you so
pretty
much.
easy.
When you don't have to share your screen, I imagine. Yeah, so thank you so much, Natalia, for joining us. I did put some things in the chat. I know there were some questions coming up, and I don't think we're going to have time to go through them today, but I wanted to make sure that you all had Natalia's contact information to follow up with her directly. And so I think that this is all the time that we have today to talk about community solar. And I just want to remind you all to please take the survey of our conservation conversation to make sure that we are gearing these conversations to what you want to talk about and what you want to know about. That is the goal of these. So that's everything that I have. So thank you all so much for joining us. Thanks, Natalia. Thanks to our speakers, and we
Thank
will see
you.
you next time. Bye.
Bye.